Is there a place in time where logic breaks down and wonderment begins? Could that be somewhere at some time along an infinite line between the reasonable and the highly unlikely? Join us on a journey into the improbable.
Today's story, Episode 275, The Zero-Sum Game, read by Kathleen Connolly. Opening and closing theme by Matthew Erdman. Somewhere and sometime, the truth might need to be compromised to win.
You should play that with the Kodo sample I found in the archives yesterday, Leah suggested, leaning back from her screen to take a break. I think one of the biggest mistakes the planners made was not creating a space allowance for physical musical instruments. A sample will never replace playing an actual guitar or saxophone. Bursa, Leah's lifelong friend, nodded and loaded the file, then played the first few bars again, smiling. I like it. I know what you're saying. You can't pluck a virtual string the way a musician would on a real instrument. But samples are all we have until we reach Proxima Centauri. Maybe we'll find something like wood there and we could make a kodo or a violin. Nice fantasy, Leah laughed, grabbed her oxy inhaler, placed it over her nose, breathed in, and then smiled. Pine-scented, she noted, then exhaled. Very popular and totally refreshing. Leah held out the device. Want to try? Bursa grimaced. No, thanks. You know that the Science Guild has debunked its health benefits several times now. The stuff is just pure oxygen with a few molecules of synthetic chemical scent. But it makes you feel good, Leah insisted. That's just a placebo effect, Bursa shot back, and you know that. It was a familiar debate, and one Leah knew neither of them could ever win. Bursa had her facts, and Leah had her experience as a user. Oxy is one of the few luxuries in this giant test tube, Leah argued. You and me were born in this thing, so the scents are the only connection we have to Earth. Besides, it doesn't do any harm. Oxy doesn't take any critical resources to make. That's not entirely true, Leah. The exchange takes water from the radiation shield and cracks it to get the O2. So, Leah challenged, turning her virtual keyboard off and beginning to pack up. The exchange does that so the environmental systems aren't taxed and our drinking water isn't used. The dangerous stuff, the hydrogen, gets vented, and it's been made since before you and I were born and nothing bad has happened. Suspecting the argument had brought their session to an end, Bursa started packing up as well. But it depletes the radiation shield, she pointed out. Using it as a resource wasn't in the original plan, and enough effort hasn't been spent studying the long-term effect on the ship. I don't want to talk about this, Leah sighed. They had been having more of these arguments lately. If she told her friend there was no problem, Bursa would argue that any reduction in the water sleeve surrounding the habitation could be harmful. But Leah's aunt, an Earthborn, had debunked that concern when she first invented Oxy. There were over 4 billion liters of water in the radiation shield, and even if they drained off thousands of liters a week to make Oxy, the most the shield would be depleted by the time they reached Proxima was 3 to 6%. Now, 3 decades later, it was still an issue which started arguments, and Leah preferred not to go there. It was a miracle that she and Bursa were friends at all. Bursa's family were engineers, and her friend had followed suit. Leah, on the other hand, had chosen to support the family Oxy business by learning how to maintain the IT infrastructure that ran the water cracking process. A love of music had brought them together when they first met at a music class at the community hall. Most of the time, they had managed to steer away from divisive issues like Oxy. Leah always held out hope that Bursa would eventually soften her belief in the Science Guild's strident position on the matter. I've got the music studio booked for next week, Leah said as she finished packing her gear. However, when she looked up and found the room empty, Bursa had already left. She'd give her friend a day to cool down before reminding her about their next session. Bursa always eventually came around, so she wasn't too concerned. Leah left the community center. Located in the park at the stern of the cylinder, it afforded an unblocked view of the entire hab. She stood, taking it in for a moment to clear her mind. Leah looked up and watched the small white dots of rowboats ply the lake 2 kilometers above her head. Her mother had admitted she still felt queasy at the sight of trees, buildings, and water suspended upside down. Leah tried to understand her mother's perspective and wondered how she'd feel if there was only the sky above her. She had been born 20 years into the 80-year flight, so Leah was young enough that she would be able to experience an open sky when they reached Proxima Centauri. Her mother and aunt, on the other hand, would never see one again. Leah pulled out her oxy inhaler and took a deep breath. Feeling calmer, she thanked her aunt for inventing the stuff and began to walk back toward the commercial district where she worked. Bursa was wrong, she said to herself. Oxy kept people happy, and that was critical for their survival. True to her prediction, Bursa didn't stay angry long. She didn't apologize either when she contacted Leah a day later. Bursa never did when it came to arguments over issues like oxy production. Instead, she just acted as if the fight hadn't occurred, and that was good enough for Leah. The next week, they practiced a new song, then spent the rest of the day recording and mixing. Although new entertainment still streamed in from Earth, it was over 2 years old by the time it reached the Tarron Ka. Most people on board, especially those born post-launch, had stopped consuming Earth-made media, which created a vibrant market for onboard production, and the two friends hoped to get their music into the ship's entertainment banks. Let's take a break, Leah suggested. I'm starting to hear things in the mix that no one will ever pick up. I need some distance. Good idea, Bursa agreed. Let's go sit in the park. They headed outside and found a bench not far from the community hall. The central light strip was emulating a midsummer afternoon, and Leah stretched out to take in the heat. It struck her as odd to think of sunning oneself. Language was so tied to the place where it developed. Sol was 2 light years behind them, but the designers had ensured the light spectrum matched the home star, while interior buildings were lit with the same wavelengths used on Earth. Leah pulled out her inhaler, taking in a few breaths of oxy. They needed to start thinking about the future. The light from Proxima Centauri would be different. Leah? Bursa said, watching her friend inhale. Lost in thought, Leah didn't respond. Leah, she tried again. This time Leah turned and looked at Bursa, who seemed anxious about something. I was just thinking about the light, Leah explained. If sunlight is so good for us, why don't we use it in the buildings? Some people do, Bursa replied, shading her eyes against the glare from the light strip. It's a matter of preference. Some people find it too blue inside. It makes them feel cold, so they prefer a warmer color, I guess. It's psychological, like oxy use. Leah scowled, choking back a barbed comment. She didn't want to argue with her friend today. I've got something I want to tell you, Bursa finally admitted. But you need to promise not to say anything until it's publicly announced. I just wanted to give you a heads up. The navigation group says we're drifting off course, and it started when the exchange began venting hydrogen from the oxy production process. Science, engineering, and the other tech guilds will petition the council to shut production down. Leah shook her head. No, that can't be true. The Tarron Ka weighs millions of tons and travels at 5% the speed of light. That's an almost unimaginable amount of kinetic energy. The energy involved in the hydrogen venting is minuscule. There is no way it could push us off course. But over several decades, Bursa added defensively, wouldn't there be a cumulative effect? Still, it wouldn't be enough to make a measurable difference, Leah objected. I'm just telling you what I've heard, Bursa said, turning away to watch some kids play on the other side of the park. Look, I don't entirely understand the math behind it. Propulsion and navigation aren't my fields. All I know is that they're saying if the venting isn't stopped soon, we won't be able to get back on course. What about all the people who use oxy? Leah demanded, holding out her inhaler. What are we supposed to do? We've still got another 40 years to live in this tin can. People will crawl the walls without it. You don't need it, Leah, Bursa reassured, grabbing her friend's hand, which was holding the inhaler. You just think you do. Leah pulled her hand away. What about all the people employed producing and distributing oxy? What happens to them? What are they going to do? Everyone can be retrained, Bursa explained, as if it was obvious and trivial, which made Leah angry. But people are happy the way things are. No one wants to change, Leah said, glaring at her friend, challenging her to prove her wrong. How would you feel if someone came along and claimed what you were doing was harmful to the ship and had to stop? Would you simply say, "Okay, that's great, I understand," Leah exclaimed, then got up. "I don't feel like finishing the mix, I'm headed out." "Leah!" Bursa started to protest. Please don't say anything until the official announcement. It'll get me in trouble." Leah turned and walked away, leaving her friend alone on the bench. "They've got to be wrong," Leah muttered to herself. "You did the right thing bringing this to me," Della, Leah's aunt, assured. Due in large part to her invention of Oxy, she had become the matriarch of the Exchange Guild by her mid-70s. Utilizing her background in marketing and industrial design, Della had managed to create a product as popular as a soft drink and as cheap to produce. She had masterfully sidestepped the concerns of science and engineering, pointing out that inhaling Oxy wasn't harmful and it seemed to ease anxiety in its users. Placebo effect or not, Oxy had helped the ship's population cope with their unique situation. The loss of a minute amount of shield water was a small price to keep people happy, she had argued. Science and engineering eventually conceded, but the issue had never gone away. "The Science Guild announced they're holding a public meeting next week," Della said, checking a calendar on her terminal. "Wednesday at noon in the amphitheater. We thought it was going to be a mid-course status report, but with what you've told us, we're assuming they are going to reveal the course deviation and their theory on why it's happening. That gives us time to get out in front of them and take control of the narrative." "But what if they're right?" Leah protested. "Let's not panic and jump to conclusions," Della cautioned. "We've pulled our own data from navigation and are analyzing it." Her terminal dinged with a new message and she stopped to read it. "Okay, our experts have confirmed the course deviation, but the cause could be any number of things, so we'll focus on alternate explanations." Della reached across the table, placing her hand on Leah's. "This would be a great opportunity to learn more about crisis management and message control," Della said. "I'd like you to work with the analytics group to build a viable alternative explanation. You'll need to have it ready before the public meeting next week. I know that doesn't give you much time. I want to upstage science and engineering and announce the course deflection before them, along with a solid explanation which doesn't involve hydrogen venting. That'll put them on the defensive and make it an uphill battle," she smiled warmly. "I've got confidence in you, Leah, and I want you to make our announcement. It will be stronger coming from a shipborne." Leah was taken aback. Her aunt had been the public face of the exchange for Leah's entire life, and she wasn't sure she was ready to take that on. "If we're wrong," Leah began to object. "Don't even go there," Della warned. "Really, how could a little low-velocity exhaust push a 6-kilometer-long asteroid off course?" she laughed. "You should be going. You've got a lot of work to do. We'll go public with our story next Tuesday, exactly a day before science and engineering. If you want time to practice your presentation, I'll make myself available." Leah got up and left, wishing she had inherited more of her aunt's confidence. I realize this news may be disconcerting." Leah stumbled over her first few words, knowing Bursa would be watching and probably hating her for what she had done. Leah decided to focus on her aunt in the front row, and by the end of the presentation, her voice was confident and strong. "As you can see, we just need to be patient and wait. The Tarron Ka's course will self-correct once we are past the anomaly," Leah concluded, turning the mic over to Della for questions before rushing off stage to throw up. Leah and the other analysts had taken the navigation data and devised a plausible alternative. A dark body, probably a rogue gas giant which hadn't been detected yet, was the culprit. The Tarron Ka was simply skimming through the edge of its gravity well, and that was causing the course change. Leah knew they had played with the size, density, motion, and distance of the mysterious object until it fit the data. It made her nervous that the exchange team was excited by the results and didn't want to question them. A model using hydrogen released over the last 3 decades produced a similar outcome without any finagling with the numbers. Della had made the group destroy the work they had done on the venting scenario, claiming science and engineering would have to develop their own model, and the exchange wasn't about to do their work for them. At Della's request, the exchange had even named the postulated dark body Erebus, after the Greek god of darkness and shadows to make it real in the imaginations of the ship's population. Immediately after Leah left the stage, Science and Engineering tried to shout rebuttals while exchange members jeered and shouted them down. Della held up her hands for calm. "I'm sorry, we're out of time today," she apologized. "Perhaps our esteemed colleagues in Science and Engineering can provide time during their public presentation tomorrow for further discussion." Leah's aunt turned the mic off, smiled, waved, and left the podium. Leah tried to exit the amphitheater without being seen, but she found her way blocked by an angry Bursa. "How could you?" her friend raged, taking Leah by one arm and pulling her aside. "You promised," Bursa accused, her face red with rage. "A rogue planet? Really? Astronavigation would have noticed it, even if it was cold and dark. There's nothing there and you know it. I can't believe you helped create such a lie. People need to know the truth." "What truth?" Leah said, trying to pull away. "We don't know for sure yet, do we? Anything could be causing the deviation. A gravity well, venting gas, or something else entirely. The data only shows that there is a course change, not what's causing it. It's too soon to condemn oxy production before we get solid proof." Leah shook her arm loose. She would not let all the work her family had done be wiped away by a few over-anxious scientists. She dug in her pocket for her inhaler, pulled it out so Bursa could see her, took a deep, calming breath, and walked away. Leah was surprised when Bursa came to practice that week, although she could feel the tension in the air. They went through their songs mechanically, not daring to say anything to each other. Then, in the middle of their last tune, Bursa abruptly stopped and swiveled around to confront Leah. "Have you heard what the exchange has been saying about my mother?" Leah tried to avoid her friend's eyes. She knew what was coming and guessed it was the only reason Bursa had shown up. "It's all over the shipnet. The exchange is spreading rumors that Science and Engineering don't know what they're doing. They're blaming us for the crop failure last month, something to do with a malformed genetic modification. Leah, they singled out my mother and they want her demoted to a food processor. They're also claiming that Science and Engineering are too ingrown and need to be broken up. They're using the course deviation and the fact that astronavigation has failed to find Erebus as proof. They're saying hydrogen venting is a red herring to hide the Science Guild's incompetence, and people are buying it." "I thought we agreed to leave politics at the door. We're here to practice," Leah reminded. It had been one of the first things they had agreed on when they began to collaborate. "But they're going after my mother. Your family's got influence. Can't you ask them to stop?" "That's all you came here for, wasn't it?" Leah demanded angrily. "You don't care about our music or me. You're only interested in my connections." "This is more important than a few songs," Bursa said. "So you admit it then," Leah growled. "You broke your promise," Bursa pointed out. "I told you about the hydrogen venting issue as soon as I found out. I trusted you. And I acted to protect my family's interests, just like you're doing now," Leah said, face turning red. "What do you think would happen if oxy production was shut down? You'd be standing there smugly telling me that my family will be retrained to grow potatoes or clean the sanitation system. Well, so can you and your mother. I hope you like the smell of fertilizer." Bursa glared at her. "You don't get it, do you? Not everything is about your stupid family's business. Suck on some reality for once instead of scented oxy. We're all in trouble, Leah. We can't wait until we pass by some imaginary gravity well. If we don't start to fix the problem now, it'll be too late." Bursa jumped up and stormed out of the practice room. For the first time, Leah wasn't sure if their friendship would survive. It had been over a month since the Exchange Guild had made its public presentation. Leah was looking out of the window of the Exchange building, watching the occasional person move along the main avenue into the distance and up the side of the habitat to the fields beyond. The Commerce District lacked its usual vibrance. After the Science Guild had lost the council vote to shut down oxy production and hydrogen venting, the technical guilds had been boycotting commercial activity. The streets were now distinctly emptier, which made Leah miss Bursa even more. She had ghosted Leah since the argument during their last practice session, and Leah heard through the shipnet that Bursa was looking for a new musical collaborator who wasn't a member of the Exchange Guild. Leah sighed and turned away from the window, wishing the whole issue would go away. But until there was definitive proof of the cause of the course drift, she knew that would never happen. Determined to find the indisputable cause, Leah loaded the course data and examined it. The model for the gravity well had been built to match the course deviation exactly. However, the hydrogen venting explanation projected a course change which didn't precisely match the nav data, but it had been created using estimates of the amount of hydrogen being released. Leah adjusted the venting model to include rising volumes over time using exchange oxy production data, which science didn't have access to, and the resulting trajectory perfectly mirrored the ship's behavior. Further, if they were passing a dark planet, their course change should follow a curve as they move past it. And the most recent data hadn't shown that. It was clear to Leah what was really causing the problem. "I came here as soon as I ran a new analysis," Leah explained excitedly. "However minimal, we should be seeing changes in the deflection by now if we're moving around a gravity well, and we're not." "You're jumping to conclusions," Della said with a dismissive tone. "Our experts need to check your work. As our model predicts, the effect would be very subtle at this point, and our navigation systems were never designed to be that sensitive. The last thing we need is to throw gas on the fire before we are absolutely sure, and your new analysis would do just that. Things are just starting to settle down. The more moderate parts of the technical guilds are considering stopping the boycott. Give me your work and I'll forward it to the rest of our team." Leah hesitated. "But Aunt Della..." "Leah, I'm not giving you a choice. You will hand over all your files and you can't tell anyone about this." Leah nodded reluctantly and left. She understood why her aunt was being so careful, but at the same time, if the exchange were wrong, delaying much longer would be a mistake. A day later, Leah discovered she had been locked out of her files. She was angry. Didn't the exchange trust her? Didn't her aunt trust her? Leah's family had practically built the guild with the profits from Oxy, so Leah would never do anything to jeopardize her family's legacy. A public message from the exchange popped up on Leah's terminal. "We are pleased to announce that our course is self-correcting as projected by our gravity well model," it proclaimed triumphantly, displaying a graphic showing the Tarron Ka curving back to its original course. Leah was scrutinizing the exchange's navigation plot when the direct message icon flashed on her screen. It was a request from Bursa. Surprised and happy to finally hear from her friend, Leah accepted the connection. But when Bursa's face appeared, contorted by anger, Leah's hopes evaporated. "Did you help your aunt fabricate this lie as well?" Bursa growled. "We've tried to verify the exchange's projection, but the council is denying us access to the external sensors. They claim they don't want them overwhelmed with requests at such a critical time, so we can only access processed data, which conveniently supports the exchange's claim. Leah, if this is a fabrication..." Bursa paused to calm herself. "Look, based on our original projections, if the course deflection doesn't stop in 2 weeks, we won't have the resources to correct it. Please, if there's something you can do," she pleaded. "Nice to see you too. Do you even care how I've been doing?" The words just slipped out. Leah hadn't realized how much she had missed her friend and how much Bursa's ghosting had hurt her. She instantly regretted the outburst, but Bursa had already broken the connection. Leah's first impulse was to try and call her friend back and apologize. However, what Bursa had said about the processed data didn't sound right. It shouldn't have supported Exchange's theory, at least using the nav records Leah had worked with a day ago. Leah pulled up the navigation data, surprised she hadn't been locked out. But it immediately became apparent why. Something had been changed. The numbers were subtly different, but without her files, she couldn't confirm the data had been altered. Next, she tried to access the raw sensor feeds, but as Bursa had claimed, they were blocked. "You had the nav data altered," Leah accused as soon as she burst through the door of her aunt's office. Several senior exchange officers were gathered around a big circular meeting table near the large windows overlooking the park end of the hab. They stopped talking and looked up in surprise. "Please give us a few minutes," Della apologized, her eyes sending daggers at Leah. Without complaint, the group picked up their notes and left the room, leaving Leah just inside the door facing the old matriarch. "Stand there and listen," Della commanded. "There is more at stake here than you realize. If the exchange were proven wrong, then we would lose control of the council, so we need to be right, and when the facts don't support your narrative, you alter them. It's as simple as that, and that's always been the way." "But you can't hide Tarron Ka's course forever," Leah exclaimed. "When we don't reach Proxima Centauri, people will know we've been lying." "Yes, the Tarron Ka will never get there," Leah's aunt agreed calmly, then added with a knowing smile. "What do you think we've been doing with our profits from Oxy all these years? We have a plan, and we've been working to implement it for decades. The exchange will make it to Centauri. More precisely, our most loyal members will. Room on the escape ship is limited." "Then you knew all along," Leah gasped. Della nodded. "Life on a ship with fixed resources is a zero-sum game, Leah, and we planned from the start to win."
You can help us continue creating original content twice a month by either heading over to ko-fi.com/makeshiftstories and making a one-time donation, or becoming an ongoing supporter at patreon.com/makeshiftstories. Makeshift Stories is released around the beginning and middle of the month. This month's story was written by Alan V. Hare and read by Kathleen Connolly. Opening and closing themes were composed and recorded by Matthew Erdman. Audio production and editing by Makeshift Studios. If you'd like to connect with us, please send an email to makeshiftstories@gmail.com or visit our website at makeshiftstories.com. Links to both are in the show notes. Makeshift Stories is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial attribution, no derivative license, which means you are free to share our stories. Just remember to credit us and don't alter anything.